Oh my god, I'm gonna sell like 1,000,000 books and be totally rich.
Welcome to Not Safe for Words. I'm your host, Crystal L. Kirkham, multi-genre author, editor, and cover designer. I'm here to give you insight into the world of publishing and to help you avoid the mistakes that others have made. So stick around, you're in for one hell of a ride where I don't curb the curses.
I can't tell you how many times I've come across someone who thought, hey, I signed a contract, I'm done, that's it, I've made it. Or, I'm self-publishing my book and I've told people about it. This shit'll probably just sell itself. Well, if you're not new to this, you know that's a load of bullshit. Books don't sell themselves. And even nowadays, when you sign with one of the big five, as an author, you're still doing a lot of footwork to help get your book out there. Now, if you are lucky enough to sign with one of the big five, you're going to have a lot of resources behind you and a lot of advertising clout. If you're one of the many, many authors who are self-publishing or going with a smaller publisher or an indie publisher, you're not going to have all that money behind you. And even if you did, it's still work. And it's a lot of hurry up and wait, unless, once again, you're doing it yourself and maybe not doing the whole process correctly. Publishing is a lot more than what people think. From the moment you finish that book, it really begins hard. Or the moment you sign that contract, there's so much that you have to do. Advertising starts long before that book ever gets out. You want to start promoting your author brand and your book. It's not an easy process. It's not a quick process. Nothing about publishing actually ever moves really all that quick. So what the fuck should you be expecting when you dive into the publishing process? That's a bit of a complicated question, to be honest. For the purposes of this episode, we're going to stick with the basics. At some point in the future of this podcast, we are going to dive in depth to the publishing process for both self-publishing and traditional publishing. But right now, let's say you've signed a contract or you've decided your manuscript is ready to self-publish. Step number one, if it's traditional, could take a year or more to go through. And that is having editors and proofreaders and all of that jazz go through your novel to try and make sure it is as good as it can be. Trust me, people will mark you down in reviews for not having commas where they expect commas to be. Or if you're trying to appeal to an American market and have British style spelling. I've had people tell me that it was riddled with typos because the spelling was British. Because, hey, you know what? I'm a fucking Canadian. That's the spelling I grew up using, not American. So for me, that was a bit of an adjustment. And most publishers, especially those based in the US, are going to want to use American spelling. So do expect changes in that regard. And if you are self-publishing, if you can afford it, hire a professional editor. Someone with experience in publishing who knows the questions to ask, who knows what is expected when that manuscript hits the sales. You need that. And if you can't afford it, you know what? I honestly do believe that you don't always need one if you've got a good handle on editing. But when it comes to editing your own work, trust me, there's always going to be a blind spot. It happens. Now, a part of this, of course, is in traditional publishing, this is a hurry up and wait. You have time things. So you get that manuscript back and all of a sudden it's a hurry up. And once again, you could be waiting months before, or even a year or more before that story hits the sales racks. So do expect a lot of that hurry up and wait, that, you know what, it seems like nothing happens and then all of a sudden everything happens and then you're back to nothing again. So you've had it edited, you've had it proofread, you've had, copy editors go over it. It's as good as it can possibly be. You have almost no typos, no missing words, things like that. Now what? Well, during that time, actually, there's a lot more going on that a lot of authors forget about. You want to keep reminding people in the right way that you have a book coming up and how exciting this is and where they can find it. And you want to keep the thought of this, especially for the 6 months prior to release, that you have this exciting book coming out and oh my God, people want it. You want to keep that excitement building. You want it to be there. And that can be kind of hard when you're kind of sitting in this limbo of lots happening, nothing happening, lots happening, nothing happening. Other things that you can expect, of course, cover design. Not every publisher is going to get your feedback on the design. A lot of the smaller ones are they do give you a chance to work with them on what you want for a cover. And a lot of them don't. Do expect that, and don't forget to ask whether or not you have input into the cover design when you sign with a publisher. Of course, if you're self-publishing, those decisions are all up to you. However, if you don't have any experience with graphic design and you're self-publishing your novel, please, for the love of all things beautiful, hire someone to do your cover. I don't care if you can't afford it. Honestly, your cover is the first thing people see. And if it is some cheap, horrible clip art or freebie photo that hasn't been properly edited to reflect your novel with fonts that are just not suited in colors that just don't work, you're not going to sell very well, no matter how much you advertise. Remember, it's that first thing that people see, that cover. It needs to be good. So, sorry, that's a little bit of a rant aside. I've seen a lot of good books ruined by terrible covers. Don't let it happen to you. I'm sure I'm going to cover that sometime later in this podcast. But for now, that is something you have to consider. Now, marketing isn't just advertising. It's also interacting and building that network as well. Marketing is something we're going to cover in the future as well. And as I've already said, if you're lucky enough to sign with one of those top 5 publishers, you've got a lot of clout behind you helping you with this. But it's something that you actually have to think about as an author. We've talked about your author branding and how to advertise yourself as an author. And by extension of that, you need to market your book, not just yourself. But a part of that is, of course, building that fan base and building that follower base want to buy your book. So when you're dealing with publishing, the biggest thing is, even if it's a traditional publisher, do not be afraid to take your time. And no matter how good your editor is, whether you're hiring one as a self-published author or whether you have an assigned editor through a publisher, don't just accept all the changes they make to your manuscript without going through them carefully. Most times when you sign that contract, and hopefully you fucking read that thing and ask questions for anything you might not have understood fully, but you have time to go through it. Don't rush it. Take your time. Take your fucking time, my friends, because editors are people. They're going to still make mistakes. They're going to miss things. They're going to make changes you might not like that much. It happens. Once again, humans make mistakes. We have bad days. We have times where we work and we're really too tired to be doing so. It happens. So take your time and go through those edits. Make sure that you are doing your novel justice, even if you have a professional working with you. All right? So that's kind of the biggest thing. I mean, you've got several stages of editing, proofreading. When you get those final proofs to approve, whether for print or for an ebook, dear God, once again, don't just sign off without looking at it. Always, 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 always take the time to go through your book. You will never regret taking the time to make sure your work is as good as it can be. It's just going to benefit you in the long run, even if it takes time now. I mean, that's your publishing process in a nutshell. It is a lot of hurry up and wait. It is a lot of paying attention to detail. And it is a lot of making sure you remember to market yourself and your book along the way. And never be afraid to ask questions. And I know a lot of authors, when they sign a contract, are kind of afraid to ask questions. Go ahead and do it. Ask the questions you need to know. And sometimes you're not going to like the answer. But we're going to talk about that more when we tackle a few other topics in the future, including reasonable expectations, which actually I think is the title of our next podcast. So hopefully this gives you all a little bit of clarity. But do remember, if you are signing with a publisher, well, many of them do choose to be fairly nice and try to accommodate you as an author. In the end, you've signed your work over to them. It's their fucking decision, and there are times you're just going to have to bite your tongue and live with it until your contract is over, which, depending on the term of the contract, could be a while. But that's something you need to think about when you do sign it and when you do go into the publishing process. And if you are self-publishing, important thing to remember is a lot of people will not sign. So if you honestly believe that your book deserves the extra clout of even an independent publisher, don't just give up quickly and self-publish it because you want it out. Rushing a book never does anyone any good. So take your time. Self-publishing, traditional publishing, do your hurry up and wait. Have your rushes, have your gaps, and take the time to put out the best fucking book you can. You deserve it. Your story deserves it. This has been another episode of Not Safe for Words. I hope you found some useful advice here today. If you have feedback on this or any other episode, tweet me or leave a voicemail on Anchor FM. Don't forget to join me next time for more publishing and writing insights. Thanks for listening.